At some point in your life, someone told you that games were a waste of time. Maybe it was a parent, a teacher, a colleague. Maybe it was a voice inside your own head, one that sounded suspiciously like all of them combined. And yet, here you are, still playing. Not because you ignored that voice, but because somewhere, deep down, you always knew something that voice didn't. Games are not an escape from life. They are a mirror of it. There is a word that has followed gaming for decades: escapism. It is almost always used as an accusation, as though stepping into a different world, even for an hour, is something to be ashamed of, something that serious adults with serious responsibilities simply don't do. And many of us believed it. We hid our hobby. We minimized it in conversations. We said, "I just play a little, nothing serious," because admitting that we genuinely loved games felt like admitting something childish, something unworthy of who we were supposed to be by now. But here is what's interesting. The same people who called gaming escapism had no problem spending 3 hours watching television, no problem losing a Sunday afternoon to a novel, no problem disappearing into a garden for an entire weekend, moving dirt from one place to another, for no practical reason whatsoever. We don't call gardening escapism. We call it a passion. The difference, and this is worth sitting with, is not the activity itself. It is who society decided was allowed to do it. Gaming was handed to children, and when we refused to give it back, we were told we hadn't grown up properly. But perhaps the opposite is true. Perhaps the people who kept playing, through careers and mortgages and raising children of their own, were holding on to something important. Something that productivity culture was very eager to take from us: the right to play. Let's look at what actually happens when we play. Not what we think happens, not what critics assume happens. What actually happens in our minds, in our bodies, in our lives. When you start a new game, you accept a challenge you know nothing about yet. You don't have a manual. You don't have a guarantee of success. You simply begin, and you learn by doing. That is not escapism. That is courage. The same quiet courage it takes to start a new job at 45, to move to a different city, to begin a conversation you're afraid of having. Games teach us to fail without shame. In the real world, failure carries weight. It lingers. It follows us into the next morning and the one after that. But in a game, failure is just information. You died. You lost the resource. The city collapsed. And then, almost automatically, you ask yourself, what would I do differently? That question is one of the most valuable questions a human mind can ask. It is the foundation of growth. And games ask it of us, gently, repeatedly, without judgment. For as long as we're willing to listen. Games also teach us about patience, not the performative patience of waiting in a queue and pretending you're fine. Real patience, the kind where you understand that some things cannot be rushed, that certain outcomes only arrive after the right conditions have been carefully built. Any strategy gamer knows this instinctively. You don't attack before you're ready. You don't expand before you can sustain the growth. You build the foundation before you build the tower. How many real-life mistakes could have been avoided by remembering that lesson? How many investments, relationships, decisions made too fast, too soon, before the foundation was solid? And finally, games teach us something we rarely admit. They teach us how to be present. When you are truly inside a game, not distracted, not half checking your phone, you are completely unreservedly here. Not in yesterday's regrets, not in tomorrow's anxiety. Here, now, in this moment, in this decision. Psychologists have a name for this state. They call it flow, and research consistently shows that regular experiences of flow are among the strongest predictors of long-term well-being, of life satisfaction, of mental resilience as we age. Games don't steal time from your life. For many of us, they are where we go to remember how to live it. Something changes after 40. The urgency that defined your 20s and 30s begins to soften. The relentless forward motion, always achieving, always proving, always becoming, starts to feel less like ambition and more like exhaustion, wearing ambition's clothes. And many people, in that moment, make one of two choices. They push harder. They interpret the fatigue as weakness and respond with more discipline, more structure, more productivity. They fill every silence with purpose. Or they begin to listen. The people who listen often find their way back to the things they loved before the world told them what to love instead. To music they played as teenagers. To books they read, not for improvement, but for joy. To games they explored not to win, but to wonder. This is not regression. This is integration. It is the quiet, confident act of a person who has lived enough to know what actually matters and is no longer willing to apologize for it. There is real science behind this. Studies on adult play, not children's play, but play in adults over 40, consistently show the same results. It reduces cortisol, the stress hormone that quietly erodes cardiovascular health, sleep quality, immune function, and cognitive sharpness over time. It builds new neural pathways. Gaming in particular, with its combination of spatial reasoning, decision-making, pattern recognition, and narrative processing, is one of the most cognitively complete leisure activities available to adults. It strengthens identity. People who maintain hobbies through midlife report significantly higher levels of self-worth and purpose than those who abandoned personal passions in favor of pure productivity. Gaming is not a guilty pleasure. It is a healthy one. And after 40, choosing it unapologetically is not a sign that you've stopped taking life seriously. It is a sign that you've finally started. So let me ask you something. When did you last do something? Not for a result, not for an outcome, not because it made you more productive or more impressive or more anything, but simply because it brought you joy. For a lot of us, the honest answer is, not recently enough. We have been so well trained in the language of usefulness, in justifying every hour, every choice, every moment of rest, that pure joy has started to feel like something we need to earn. But joy doesn't work that way. Joy is not a reward. It is a practice. And play, in whatever form it takes for you, is one of the oldest, most human ways of practicing it. Every game you've ever loved taught you something true, about patience, about starting over, about building carefully, thinking clearly, failing without shame, and finding satisfaction in progress that no one else can see or measure. Those are not lessons from a screen. Those are lessons for a life. So the next time someone, or some voice inside your own head, suggests that playing games is something you should have outgrown, remember this: the people who keep playing are not the ones who refused to grow up. They are the ones who understood, earlier than most, that growing up was never supposed to mean growing silent. It was supposed to mean finally knowing what's worth your time. Play is worth your time. It always was.